This league, man. Another big NBA trade. Now, I think first and foremost, the biggest thing I notice is the fact that it seems like nobody's really talking about this. Even though a lot of people are talking about it, nobody is talking about it in the grand scheme of things because people are still crashing out about the Luka and AD trade, which, yes, rightfully so, makes sense. But last night, a pretty damn big trade. Here we have De'Aaron Fox going to the Spurs, Zach LaVine going to the Kings in a 3-team trade with the Bulls here. So we're going to talk about that in this video. Couple things I want to touch on, how it impacts the Spurs, how it impacts Sacramento, why the Bulls did it, and then maybe like who got the better of this deal. But first off, I think the first thing noting is the fact how this is, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I just like when players get traded for each other and stars, that type of thing. I think it's the blockbuster trade. And the fact that, it's not causing the buzz, not that it could cause the same buzz as Luka and AD, but it's like not even like the group chats aren't blowing up about this deal and that type of thing. It's funny because had that Luka and AD trade not happened, this would be a massive one, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. It is funny how things work. Even just looking at the tweet numbers, like the original tweet about this trade from Shams, I think had like 16 million views, something like that. The Anthony Davis Luka one is at like 100 million views. So kind of puts into perspective who's caring about it. But I guess, again, rightfully so, it's just kind of shocking to me. But let's talk about this trade. Then, like I said, we'll kind of go through each part of it because I think a lot of people have been saying, like, why would the Bulls do that? Because, again, they're a team that isn't getting any studs in this one. But let's talk about the details first. So full trade here from Shams. Spurs getting Fox and McLaughlin, obviously Fox being that centerpiece. Then you have the Kings getting LaVine, Sissoko, 3 first-round picks, and then 3 second-round picks. And the Bulls get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and then their own 2025 pick back. So when you look at this, obviously there's kind of a sense of, well, why would the Bulls do it? The Bulls don't like this contract, right? You have another 3 years of a heavy deal from Zach LaVine in a spot in which he may not feel like he wants to be there. Like, if we really do look at him recently, he's had a good year. No one's saying that, right? But you know how he had missed that time for personal reasons and all? Like, I do think there was some malcontentness, if that's a word, growing there. He was walking up and down the court, didn't seem as interested. And quite honestly, I don't blame him or the Bulls because I think the Bulls are realizing that they should be sellers. This is not a Bulls team that's built to even come close to sniffing, honestly, I was going to say the championship, but we could probably say the playoffs, right? They're close right now, but they are like, I could see teams below them, or even if you do, actually, never mind below them, right? They're in the 10 seed now, so a play-in team. If they had to play the Magic or the Pistons or the Hawks or, the Heat, that type of thing, I think that they're a step below. So I think that they're realizing that and probably making the smart move, because even if you do want to counter what I said and say, no, they could compete for a playoff spot, don't you think that's as far as they're going, a playoff spot? Like, realistically, they're not winning a championship. So I think they should be sellers. I think they realize that. And maybe even Zach LaVine's the first to go, right? Like, I would not be surprised if Vucevic is moved or anything like that. Like, realistically, this team has some young talent. They don't need to focus on some of these vets. So there's one thing. I get why the Bulls did it. They're kind of saying, all right, you know what? Big contract. We don't necessarily need it right now. And, they get a pick, they get some players, they're going to be able to kind of manipulate themselves moving forward. So I get it, but let's not act like they're the winners of this deal either, right? Like, they're not getting the player. The Sacramento side of things makes sense for me. Like, if we look at this, you do have, Zach LaVine, who this season is averaging 24, 5, and essentially 5. And De'Aaron Fox, who I argue should have been an all-star, he's averaging 25, 5, and 6, so it's very, very similar. You are getting a little bit of an age discount, a couple years here, right? Actually, maybe like 3 years with De'Aaron Fox on the Spurs side of things, but we'll get into them in a second. The reason I believe Sacramento wants to do this is to be able to get someone that will stretch the floor, and I do think play alongside now the ever-emerging Malik Monk, who's been very, very ball-dominant, and we even had the issues with what was going on with the Kings and De'Aaron Fox even when Brown was there, right, before being fired. Like there's something there and something, tangible that we were seeing. But let's just take a peek at, what we're seeing. This is De'Aaron Fox's shot log this season. it's not going to look all that crazy, but I do want to note a couple things. So obviously he's shooting 62% of his shots from down low. League average is 59. From deep, kind of from these areas, he's shooting 30%. I think I want to say this is percentage. No, this is field goal percentage, so not percent of shots. Let's see. Shot 44 and overall 32 from, so these are field goal percentage. But either way, the darker is the more common, right? So don't pay attention to the percentages, pay attention to the visual. You look at Zach LaVine, he could still score in the paint, which is part of the Kings' identity, but he definitely is filling it up from outside a little bit more and shooting a little bit more from outside, and the numbers say that, right? This season, he's averaging 45% from three, good for him, but he's a 38.7% three shooter this season in his career. De'Aaron Fox, and this is including that really good year last year, 33% on his year and 32% this season. He just isn't the shooter. So now with a Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Sabonis, like there's a lot of guys on that team that can score from multiple areas. And I'm not saying De'Aaron Fox couldn't. Like De'Aaron Fox can do everything Zach LaVine did, right? This is not a comparison saying like, Zach LaVine, they just made an upgrade over him. I think he does fit the team, but so did De'Aaron Fox. The biggest point is that you're getting rid of a guy that maybe didn't necessarily want to be there, or there's some friction and that type of thing, right? And you're replacing him with a guy that I think can do what he did, at least, on par, or potentially script-wise, game breakdown-wise, be able to stretch the floor a little bit more. If you're talking De'Aaron Fox versus Zach LaVine, I'm taking De'Aaron Fox all day long. I think he's the best guy in this deal, so I'm not making that point. Not at all. I mean, I think it'd be silly to make that point. The guy's 3 years younger and I think better. So makes sense why the Kings would do it, though, right? They get a guy that kind of fits the bill, fits the mold, doesn't need to be as ball dominant as Fox, still very ball dominant, but can score from multiple areas, but does ultimately stretch the floor. And you throw in the fact that, the Spurs, I'm sure, were just dying for a guy like Fox. It makes it even easier, right? You look over to the Spurs side of things. You now have Wembanyama paired with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox just turned 27, so he's got plenty of years left. He can run. He can do his own thing. He can also pass very, very well. He's averaged plenty of assists in his career. So looking at his last few years, he's a 6.1 assists per game guy in his career. But dating back to the 2021 season, he averaged almost 8 or 7.5 assists. He's like a 6 assists, 7 assists per game type of a guy, right? Which is going to be really good because now they do have a number 2 scorer, which I think is part of the Spurs' struggles up until this point. They have a number 2 scorer and a guy that can be a 40 minutes per game point guard alongside Wembanyama. So I get why they did it as well. Again, looking at the details, it really does make sense what every team was trying to do. Sell, which, you lose that contract, right? Get a guy, but then also prepare for the future because, this is the Kings. They gave up the best player in the deal. No kidding, they get 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and, also good player. And then the Spurs pretty much is getting De'Aaron Fox, which also makes sense, right? The Spurs gave up plenty, but nothing that crazy. They gave up picks and then, 2 players. Kevin Huerter's coming from the Kings. So each spot kind of makes sense, and it's very clear as to what the goal was here, which in my book, that's like a successful trade. I think the Bulls accomplished their goal. The Kings got rid of a stud, but got something back. Like they didn't get a nobody back, and it's like, oh man, how's this going to work? No, Zach LaVine's going to be good. I think he fits the team well. And then the Spurs obviously got what they wanted. They were probably the spearheaders of this, and it worked out. So yeah, to me, if I had to rank, I think it's very simple. Spurs, Kings, Bulls in terms of who won this deal. The Kings probably got the biggest load. Pause. But ultimately, realistically, De'Aaron Fox is the best player in this deal, and now they have a centerpiece along with a second guy in De'Aaron Fox, with Wembanyama being the centerpiece. So, yeah, I like this one. I think it's very, very comical that no one seems to be talking about or caring about it. Like, we'll still hear Anthony Davis and Luka talk on social media today. Meanwhile, this, what I would consider a big deal, happened in the league. But, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Loving doing sort of these reactionary videos, sort of brief Ev Singleton show videos here on the second channel. So, hopefully, you guys do enjoy as well. And if you did, let me know in the comments so we can kind of, hear the feedback and want to continue to make these better and better. But catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.